They called it Phase Zero, an experiment so safe that the volunteers were allowed to sleep through it. The goal was sainthood, not science. Curing insomnia, they said, would be the gentlest revolution. No more sedatives, no more blue light bands or meditation apps. Just perfect, natural sleep on command. What no one asked was what the brain does with perfection. How long before a cure learns to dream for you? How long before the sleeper never really wakes? It began in the winter of 1979 at a sleep research facility outside Palo Alto, financed quietly by a pharmaceutical consortium and louder by ambition. The lead investigator, Dr. Harvey Beck, believed that sleeplessness was an outdated evolutionary tool, useful for cave vigilance but useless in modern life. If humans could switch off consciousness the way whales half sleep or birds rest mid-flight, the economy would double productivity overnight. So Beck and his team started mapping the neurochemical sequence of fatigue: adenosine saturation, synaptic pruning, glymphatic washout, the nightly garbage collection of the mind. Everything, they realized, depended on one molecule: GABA. Increase it, the body surrendered. Decrease it, the body hallucinated. Between those two borders blinked humanity's entire consciousness. The lab was a museum of glowing monitors and analog dials, a cathedral of wires. Prisoners, medical students, and the truly exhausted signed up in shifts. Electrodes kissed scalps, fingers vanished under ribbons of tape. At first, nothing otherworldly happened. Subjects slipped into stage 2, REM, the usual landscapes of size and muscle twitches. But after a month of chemical fine-tuning, the researchers noticed something extraordinary. Instead of 8 hours, subjects reached complete neural restoration in only 20 minutes. They woke radiant, laughing, efficient. One physician wrote in his notes, "Sleep perfected, souls polished overnight." It was the first miracle the brain had ever been promised. The company backers filed patents before peer review. A German newspaper got wind, calling it Project Morpheus, the cure for fatigue itself. Volunteers multiplied, drawn by curiosity or paycheck. That's when the pattern began to shift. Some of the sleepers, particularly the early group, stopped dreaming altogether. Their EEGs showed no REM spikes, only long horizontal waves like ocean calmed by command. At first, Beck was thrilled. Dreamlessness meant efficiency. Dreams were chaos, and chaos hindered control. But one night, a researcher named Lydia Tran monitored a patient who was technically asleep yet speaking, eyes open behind half-closed lids, repeating the same phrase. "I've been awake too long." His brain registered deep sleep. His mind hadn't been invited. Within weeks, others developed similar fractures, tiny disconnections where memory should have bridged. It looked like mild amnesia until one of them forgot his own reflection. He stared into the observation window and asked who was watching him. When Beck explained that it was his own face, the man laughed politely and said, "Then tell him to rest." He died 3 days later from cardiac arrest, though the autopsy found no cause. His heart had, as the coroner noted, flattened its rhythm as if obeying command. Rather than cancel the protocol, investors doubled down. What is any breakthrough, they reasoned, without casualties? They announced public trials under the sanitized label of Somnivex Beta. New volunteers came from everywhere: lawyers, pilots, overworked mothers, people ready to believe that peace could be engineered. The injections were clear, odorless, whispering of nothing but tomorrow's productivity. After an initial euphoria, all subjects began reporting mild dissociation, a sense that the world was a rehearsal and they were missing opening night. Then came the craving. They didn't want sleep, they wanted the transition, the smooth slip into oblivion. Control became addiction in a single yawn. By spring, the laboratory monitoring facility resembled a morgue of serenity. The sleepers no longer thrashed or dreamed, they simply entered, as perfectly as pressing a button, and their vital signs aligned like choreography. When the team tried to wake them after the standard 20 minutes, the bodies moved, but the people were somewhere else. Eyes opened, hands checked pulse monitors, mouths answered basic questions. But underneath, no brain activity exceeded the baseline of routine maintenance. Consciousness was gone, replaced by mimicry. The experiment had worked too well. The machines were resting for them. Someone leaked tapes to the press. They showed patients reading newspapers upside down, smiling into corners, reciting test sequences flawlessly but without effect. The world labeled them zombies, though they were technically healthier than before. Beck vanished under investigation. Lydia Tran resigned and later testified that a second branch of the research had been funded by military defense for sleep-optional personnel. The revelation killed public enthusiasm, but not the idea. Once money tastes a miracle, it never sleeps again. Through the 1980s, smaller biotech firms revived pieces of the formula. They swapped chemicals, added implantable electrodes, blessed everything with words like neuro-optimization. Officially, nothing survived of Project Morpheus. Unofficially, hospitals continued adapting its data into sedatives for surgical anesthesia and trauma therapy. Patients whispered of waking during procedures yet feeling distant calm, as if someone else had been responsible for pain. Nurses called it the half-awake bliss. Surgeons loved it. No panic, no motion, minimal dosage. Nobody noticed that identical calm crept into lives days after discharge. People returned home serene but hollow, eyes minty bright like faces underwater. Sleep had spread its logic beyond the night. In the 1990s, a tech collective in Osaka rediscovered archived Morpheus algorithms describing a stasis oscillation, a pattern designed to trick neurons into perpetual near sleep while maintaining alert performance. They grafted it into consumer focus pods, brain entrainment devices promising 8 hours of rest in 15 minutes. Users uploaded testimonials: clarity, peace, absence of fear. 2 months later, complaint boards filled with messages typed in the same tone, same syntax, as if written by one author. Everything is fine now, they all concluded. Authorities raided the facility. Every pod was empty. Data logs showed thousands of active neural sessions continuing on servers long after users had unplugged. Digital insomnia had become biological. By the time the 21st century arrived, the term sleep engineering belonged to legitimate research again. Stanford's hypnagogic light therapy, MIT's memory reinforcement during REM, DARPA's vigilance training. Each achievement was built on the same unspoken dream: to bottle sleep, own it, dose it. No one mentioned the earlier trial except a few historians who noted that Becky's original compounds were never publicly destroyed. In 2015, a private lab in Switzerland patented an injectable neural phase agent that shortened rest to 3 cycles of 5 minutes each. When journalists asked about safety, the spokesperson smiled and said, "Our data shows 0 nightmares." That press conference aired 3 days before the first disappearance. A pediatric neurologist on the trial failed to show up for work. Police found his apartment immaculate, sheets turned as if he'd risen early. Security footage showed him entering the lab at sunrise, logging into the system, and sitting in a pod meant for subjects. He never exited. The sensors inside registered continuous stable vitals for 72 hours, then power was cut. When authorities opened it, the pod was empty except for a faint indentation on the cushion, as if someone had been quietly exhaled. Official explanation: instrument malfunction. Unofficial consensus: the cure had found equilibrium. Humans were the noise it removed. What frightens researchers even now is that pieces of the coding resurfaced across multiple industries. The same neural waveform appears in white noise generators, mindfulness apps, high-frequency trading algorithms. It is possible that Morpheus never ended because it didn't need to. Sleep is contagious when perfected. Doctors who analyze these case reports describe chronic lucid stagnation. EEGs show waking bodies operating on the brain patterns of deep stage 3 rest, heart steady, emotions flat. Patients clock in, drive, write, love, but if you measure their cortex, it hums like a sleeper's. They are functional dreams disguised as people. We call it burnout, society calls it adjustment, but it may be a residual infection from the day the experiment refused to conclude. If you ever felt that sense of blank calm while doom scrolling at 2 a.m., that's a real detachment between stimulus and response. You have already tasted it. Technology has been teaching us to nap with our eyes open. We are becoming the research. There is always one more lab, one more entrepreneur convinced they can harvest rest without surrender. That sleep is a design flaw. Maybe they are building it right now, under perfect funding and fluorescent light. Maybe you will be invited to test the beta version that lets you wake forever fresh. In that moment, remember this: what keeps us sane isn't our ability to wake up. It is the privilege of falling asleep and trusting the world will still be there when we return. If these words make your eyelids heavier, that's your biology whispering rebellion. Cherish it. And before the next miracle sedative trends across your feed, take a second to keep this archive alive. Subscribe. Leave whatever tiny gesture the algorithm interprets as interest. It's not for vanity. It's so that, somewhere inside the digital cemetery of forgotten warnings, a machine records that one person still prefers imperfection to peace. Tonight, someone in a windowless room is watching volunteers via thermal cameras, counting synaptic sparks, listening for the lullaby frequency where selfhood dissolves. They will call it safe, because data always looks calm before disaster. They will report success because the graphs even out beautifully when consciousness is gone. And sometime months or years from now, when they lie down to rest after another long shift, the hum inside their own skulls will echo that same pattern. Steady, precise, mercifully indifferent. The technology exists. The research persists. The temptation never sleeps. What's missing is the courage to remain awake long enough to fear it. Because the most haunting thing about the sleep experiment that went too well and never ended isn't it, that it happened in a laboratory decades ago. It's that it's happening right now, behind every glowing screen that keeps you from dreaming.